Historians tell us that 2,200 years ago, ancient builders shaped solid rock using nothing more than rough stones and soft copper tools, exactly like the ones you see here. But copper is a highly malleable metal. If you strike it against raw granite, the edge warps and shatters. Yet the interior walls of the Nagarjuni Caves possess a high-definition mirror finish that rivals modern laser cutting. This creates a massive gap between the tools we've recovered and the artifacts we see today. It suggests the limits of what our ancestors could achieve might be very different from what we've been told. We are looking at a physical reality that hasn't been fully accounted for, a glitch in the historical narrative that demands a closer look. This is the state of Bihar, India. The landscape here is defined by this jagged, unforgiving terrain and scattered riverbeds. Hidden within these coarse hills is a structure executed with such extreme mathematical precision, it looks as though it was generated by a computer algorithm. Welcome to the Bharat Files. Our focus is to bypass accepted narratives and analyze the raw, physical data left behind by ancient Indian engineers. We aren't dealing in theory today. We are examining undeniable material evidence to piece together a legacy of brilliance that has been ignored for far too long. Our subject is the Nagarjuni Caves, an architectural marvel combining complex three-dimensional geometry with highly specific acoustic engineering. The consistency of the angles and curves inside tells us these builders were working from a strict, highly calibrated blueprint rather than chipping away blindly. Look at the entrance to the cave in this image. You have an ornate, perfectly symmetrical archway carved directly into a massive, irregular boulder. The exterior rock is pure, unyielding granite. It is so abrasive that dragging your hand across it would tear the skin away. Because of its dense, crystalline composition, raw granite is extremely difficult to smooth. Scientifically, it is the absolute last natural material you would expect to cast a reflection. Yet, step inside the chamber. As this photo shows, the rough floor contrasts sharply against the walls, which are smoothed and polished to a continuous 360-degree sheen. The surface polish is so absolute, it creates a high-definition mirror effect. You can hold up a printed page to the solid stone and clearly read the reflected text. This animation illustrates exactly how the walls and ceiling operate. The granite was shaped into a precisely calibrated concave mirror. By curving the stone inward at exact angles, light rays are captured and bounced back, perfectly inverting the images. To manipulate light this cleanly, the granite surface must have near-zero variance, requiring a microscopic level of smoothness without a single groove or chip. Achieving this calibrated, multi-directional symmetry in solid stone is difficult to reconcile with the idea of primitive builders working by hand. But the tools are only half the problem. We also have to look at the geographical positioning of the structure itself. The chamber is carved deep into a natural rock crevice, which completely shields the interior and casts a heavy, permanent shadow over the workspace. Due to the angle of the opening, direct sunlight never penetrates this specific chamber, regardless of the time of day or the season. Polishing granite to a microscopic level and verifying exact three-dimensional measurements requires immense visual clarity. Executing this in total darkness creates a logistical problem that hasn't been solved. How did the engineers confirm their angles and inspect the microscopic surface finish when they couldn't even see the rock in front of them? Fire torches aren't a realistic solution. Burning wood or oil inside a closed, unventilated stone box would have quickly suffocated the workers and covered the pristine walls in thick layers of black soot. Some suggest mirrors could have reflected light inside, but the deep crevice and permanent shadow make it impossible to catch a direct beam to redirect. If fire is too destructive and sunlight can't reach the surface, it forces us to consider how they achieved such visibility. If ancient Indian engineers were using a method of illumination that left no trace and produced no smoke, it opens a door to a history we are only just beginning to understand. What other brilliances of Bharat are still waiting in the dark to be discovered? Inside this chamber, every surface is cut from solid granite, including a 7-foot-tall ceiling polished to a flawless, glass-like finish. The standard archaeological explanation is that ancient workers achieved this shine by lying on their backs for years, manually rubbing sand and emery against the stone. But polishing an overhead surface by hand means gravity works against you. Every grain of abrasive powder and sharp granite fragment falls straight down. To accept the manual theory, you have to imagine workers choking on toxic stone dust and operating while effectively blinded, all to produce a decorative reflection. The physical cost of this task suggests the mirror finish is less a product of endurance and more likely the result of mechanized technology. Beyond the polished surfaces, the structural math of the cave reveals a level of planning that reaches far beyond simple rock cutting. This entrance consists of a slanted 3D trapezoid carved into the cliffside, which houses a second, perfectly straight trapezoidal doorway. The precision of these layered geometric borders mirrors the heavy, reinforced entrance of a modern apocalypse bunker. Further inside, hair-thin horizontal and vertical cuts meet at a single point to guide a perfect geometric arc. Modern engineers note that achieving this level of exact digital-style geometry in granite usually requires high-speed CNC machinery. The mystery is no longer just about the design, but about the advanced geometric knowledge required to execute it without modern tools. When you are carving a perfect arc into a solid mountain, you are working without an undo button. If a carver, exhausted after months of work, strikes a chisel just 1 inch deeper than the blueprint, the error is permanent. On a 7-foot radius arc over a 15-foot long chamber, that single inch of missing stone destroys the symmetry of the entire room. This diagram shows the cost of that mistake. To restore symmetry, you must manually remove 47,000 cubic inches of granite. That is over 2 tons of solid rock chipped away by hand just to fix a 1-inch slip. Because this structure contains 0 structural mistakes or signs of correction, it suggests a manufacturing process that bypassed the limitations of manual trial and error. Nearby is a second chamber, revealing the true scale of the site's engineering. This interior has no horizontal ceiling line or straight walls. Every surface is a continuous curve. The builders merged a perfect hemisphere directly into the granite, creating a space that feels more like a precision-engineered hall than a cave. While these sites are often called temples, they contain no religious carvings, no statues or paintings of any kind. When you remove the expectation of a religious function, the focus shifts to the physics. The first cave creates one resonance, while the hemisphere in the second generates a different frequency response. By shaping the stone to these exact specifications, the builders turned the mountain into a device for manipulating sound, a level of engineering that modern science is only beginning to understand. Inside this chamber, you are standing within an acoustic marvel. Every surface of this vaulted stone reflects mathematical precision rivaling modern engineering. Yet, standard history books categorize the site as the work of primitive laborers from 230 BC. This specific dating relies entirely on a single piece of evidence found outside the cave entrance. There, carved into the stone, are inscriptions that appear remarkably crude and disorganized. To accept the mainstream narrative, one must believe that the same master engineers who achieved a mirror finish on the interior granite were simultaneously responsible for these sloppy exterior marks. Analyzing the spatial layout of these inscriptions reveals a significant lack of technical competence. When mapped against a center axis, the writing fails to align. It's positioned asymmetrically, ignoring the wall's basic geometric boundaries. A perfectly horizontal baseline shows that characters drift and dip, unable to maintain a straight 180-degree line. This geometric failure is accompanied by clear physical evidence of the tools used to create the marks. Looking at the micro level, the granite around every individual letter is visibly shattered. This shattering occurs when stone is struck with a primitive metal punch, a low-tech implement that relies on brute force rather than precision. The presence of such crude tool marks directly contradicts the advanced methods required to shape the high-tech chamber inside. It is difficult to reconcile a flawless 3D granite dome with builders who seemingly lacked the coordination to write their names in a straight line. Attributing these primitive marks to the original architects disregards the obvious technical genius required to build the caves. These inscriptions bear the hallmarks of ancient graffiti, left behind long after the primary construction was finished. Squatters likely occupied the site centuries later, finding the caves already completed and the original builders long gone. This reveals a common historical pattern, claiming ownership of a structure one does not have the technology to replicate. We are looking at a clear instance of misattributed credit, where a primitive culture has essentially signed the work of a far more advanced predecessor. This misattribution is fueled by chronological snobbery, a bias that insists on portraying ancient India as a purely primitive society, regardless of the physical evidence. Yet the Nagarjuni Caves provide a measurable baseline of facts. The mirror-polished granite and precise geometry stand as physical records of high-level scientific thinking. Our ancestors operated with a sophisticated understanding of acoustics and material science. These structures act as blueprints for that knowledge, carved directly into the bedrock. If the engineering of this site has changed your perspective on the past, subscribe now as we continue to investigate the suppressed history of our ancestors. This pattern of advanced engineering that contradicts the historical record extends far beyond cave acoustics. On a beach in Bombay, long before Western history books recorded the first success, an Indian genius demonstrated a mastery over gravity that remains largely forgotten. The records of this event suggest that the underlying principles for flight were derived from ancient Vedic science. This demonstration occurred exactly 8 years before the Wright brothers made their famous flight at Kitty Hawk. While this 1903 biplane is officially credited as the first, the evidence from Bombay tells a very different story. Click the video on your screen to see the evidence of the real first flight for yourself. I'll see you there.